For those of you that have watched any of my videos, you know that I'm a photographer and I shoot a lot of film as well as digital photos. But over the past year or so, I've kind of primarily focused on digital photography. I really love film, but there are a lot of nuances that kind of go into the film process, such as having to develop, get scans, and just a lot of extra stuff that I don't really like to deal with. So I've primarily started to shoot digital photography, but I've always had this goal of making my digital images look like film. So when I was reached out to about a month ago by a company called Dehancer that created some software that fits as a plugin that works with Adobe Lightroom, I was immediately interested. So they provided me with the software for free to be able to test it out, and over the past month or so, I've been shooting in a lot of different conditions to try to test out this software and see what its capabilities really were and how it can fit into my workflow. So in this video, I'm going to show you some of the different capabilities that Dehancer can use, as well as going through and kind of showing you some of my editing processes. So let's just jump onto Lightroom, and right now I have up a image of Monique that I had taken, I want to say about a month ago, pretty early on while I was starting this. And this was shot with my Fujifilm X-E4 with a Canon 28mm FD lens that is converted onto the digital body. So yeah, it's a f3.5, gives very interesting bokeh in my opinion. It's not extremely sharp by any means. You can see how soft it is. And this image is actually edited only in Lightroom, not Dehancer. So you can kind of see, show you the before and after of that. So you can see that I kind of did quite a bit to this image. But then what you would do if you're going to use the Dehancer platform is you would just right click on the image, you go to edit in like you normally would for Photoshop. But then once you install the Dehancer platform, you would hit Edit in Dehancer Lightroom plugin. So you just click that, and then it'll pop this up. And what you'll want to select is Edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments. And this just gives you all of the Lightroom adjustments that I had made. So you saw, like, I edited this image in Lightroom prior to bringing it into Dehancer. So you'll just click Edit. So then Dehancer pops up, and this is kind of what the platform looks like. So off to the left, you have your film profiles, and there are a ton of different options here, all sorts of different film stocks, some that are expired, black and white, all different types. Pretty much anything that you can think of, it's probably here. So you're easily able to just go through and click and choose any of these that you're interested in. And what I kind of like to do is I'll just go through, and I like that there's kind of a little preview of it so you can kind of get a little bit of an idea without actually having to click on them. But once you click on it, it comes up almost instantaneously. And then you can come up to the right here and click on the preview to be able to see exactly what that's all impacting in your image. And then let's say that you don't want to use any film profiles. All you have to do is uncheck this, and you don't have to use any film profiles at all. And you can just use some of the different tools that they have on the right-hand side. So some of these things include source, which helps with defringing and just different temperature and tint compensations. So what I've actually noticed is that the temperature compensation in Dehancer works a little bit better than the one in Lightroom. So that's something that I've kind of been using when it comes to white balance. But for this image, I'm not really going to mess around with temperature. Expand has to do with the black and white point, which is kind of different. I don't really know what this color mode thing does. There's a lot of features that I don't necessarily use, as well as the print. I don't really touch this all that much. Unless I maybe will mess with exposure, but typically I'll try to do that in Lightroom prior to pulling it into Dehancer. Color head I don't typically mess around with, and if I do, what I'll do is I'll click on Gang, and what that means is you can move up and down all the sliders simultaneously, which is kind of nice, just to kind of pinpoint different colors that I'm wanting to adjust a little bit. But I tend to stay away from that. Film grain, you have a lot of different options, which is really cool. You can even add color noise into the grain, which I think is a nice added feature. I don't always use film grain, but it's really nice to be able to have all of these different options where you can change the resolution of the actual film grain, you can change the size, you can change the amount, and then you can change exactly how it's going to impact. And obviously, this is super extreme. You can adjust if it's going to impact the highlights, the midtones, and the shadows specifically, which is really cool. So that feature is pretty nice. And then again, you can see like kind of the before and after a little bit. I need to zoom in a little just to see more of the impact. And you can really fine tune this as much as you want. I'm just doing it kind of quick to show you guys some of the features. And you can also change this to different film types as well as digital. It's currently under experimental, but it gives you more of that digital grain rather than the film grain, which usually shows up when you're using like high ISO and whatnot. Halation is, in my opinion, probably one of the coolest features. So what this does is, for those of you that know what CineStill 800T does, it kind of creates these red halations around different light sources. So let's say that I want to add halation, and you can immediately see the impact of that. And then what you do is you can have all of these different tools to kind of fine tune that to exactly, you know, the area where you want. And one of the really nice things about the halation tool is that you can click on mask mode and you're easily able to see exactly where the halation is showing up. So one cool thing is you have this hue slider and you can shift it a lot more towards red, which is what I typically end up doing. I try to stay away from having too much in the background, just for this image at least, because it's a little bit distracting. And then kind of decreasing the impact a little bit as well, just so that there's not a whole lot going on. Just having this subtle option around her sunglasses and then kind of on her earring. It's kind of something that it's like, you know, you might not notice it, but it's something that I kind of like, and I just think it gives it a little bit of that film-like look, which is kind of what I'm trying to achieve. And then what's nice, actually, so I had edited this image previously, so you can actually do presets, which is super cool. So I created one called Portrait Halation, which just instantly adjusts it to where I wanted it. Then you can like check out mask mode and see exactly what's all being impacted. And yeah, it's super cool. Another effect is bloom. So those of you that have watched some of my previous videos, you know that I use the Tiffin Black Pro Mist filter on a lot of my images. I haven't been using it as much recently, but I used to a lot. But what this does is it kind of gives that effect. So you can see instantly it kind of goes after the highlights and blooms them a little bit. And what's really nice about this tool, similarly to the halation tool, is you have mask mode and you can see exactly what's being impacted and being able to really fine tune exactly how you want your image to be impacted. And so then you can see the immediate impact, and it's really cool. So if you didn't use a filter, you're able to add bloom back, and then maybe you used a filter and you want it to be even stronger, you can add even more bloom. And then down at the bottom you have vignette, and I typically don't really use vignette. So yeah, that's pretty much all the different tools that you have in Dehancer, and I think it's a really cool addition, kind of in conjunction with Lightroom. So from here, basically what you do as soon as you are done editing your image the way that you want it, just double check, because you're actually not able to go back and then make changes from here. So you'll want to make sure that you like how everything looks, and then you would click OK. And so then your edited image will show up in Lightroom. And so then you can kind of see the before and after. Again, all I did was add the halation. Oops, wrong image. I ended up collapsing them on each other. So let's say that, let me go ahead and reset this image so then you can see exactly what the impact entirely looks like. So like you can see, pretty strong impact, and you can see, oops. You can see on her sunglasses and then on her earring, just a little bit of that halation, which I think is a cool touch. So yeah, that's kind of everything for that image, and then I'll just kind of go over another image and show you how I would typically edit something. So for this photo, it's just a photo of a seagull flying while I was on the pier in Malibu that I had shot. Here are some of the small edits that I made in Lightroom prior to pulling this into Dehancer, in case you're interested. And then I'll go to edit in Dehancer. And so then I'll go around and I'll take a look at all of the different options that I have for film types. So I'm basically just looking for something that, I kind of like the film look maybe. So you can see what it looked like before, after, which is really nice. And let's say that I wanted to maybe brighten that image up even. You can do different things like this with the push-pull feature. Or you could come over to this print option, and then you can increase the exposure as well this way. So it's kind of nice because you can make those adjustments in Lightroom, but you can also kind of fine-tune those things in Dehancer. So let's say that I'm happy with this, and do I want to add film grain? There's already kind of a little bit of grain in here. I think that I accidentally shot this at kind of a higher ISO. Wasn't really expecting to take a photo. I just caught the seagull flying and I was like, all right, let's take this really fast. So I pulled out the camera and didn't really have my settings prepared for this. So I don't think I'd add any film grain. Maybe I'd take a look at halation or bloom and just kind of see how that's going to impact the image. So you can see exactly where that's going to kind of hit. Just a little bit on the tail. And immediately what I end up doing is I bring the hue all the way down because I want it to be more on the red side of things. I'm not going to amplify this anymore. If anything, I'm going to do less. For me, on this kind of an image, it's almost like, what's the point in adding the halation? I don't really think that it adds anything to this image. So I'd probably just not use it. The bloom kind of looks nice though. I do like how that impacts the image immediately. Just kind of softens up the image a little bit. And I think I kind of like it right here actually. I might decrease the impact just slightly. And you can see exactly what all of these tools kind of do. The diffusion, I'm gonna bring that down there. Yeah, so probably something around there. And so then this was the before, and then that's the after. And maybe I would just take a look at temperature compensation to see if I wanted to add any temperature comp. And then what's kind of nice is you can just click on this to only see how the temperature is being affected. And I'd probably bring that down even more. And yeah, right there is pretty good. So I'll just go ahead and click OK. And then that pulls it directly into Lightroom, and then you're ready to go. All right, so let's do one more image. And let's go ahead and do this image I took of this car. So I haven't edited this image at all. The only thing that I did was crop it. There's kind of a lot going on. I really wish that I could have gotten this car and this shot when it wasn't trash day. But you know, you got to work with what you got. So for those of you that have watched me edit previously in some of my videos, what I tend to do is I'll click on auto, see if I like that. I definitely do not want it to be that warm because it was a cooler morning up in the Ventura area. I've been adding a lot more contrast to my images recently. And then when I come down to my tone curve, what I do is I bring up my shadows, bring this down, keep this somewhere in the middle, then bring this up slightly just to add that contrast in, and then I'll show you exactly how that impacts it. And then I like to click reset to kind of see, and you can see exactly how I crop this now. Or you can take a look side by side just to see how that kind of affected it. So from here, I think it's pretty good. I think all the colors are pretty much where I would want them to be. I would maybe adjust this green to be a little bit more towards the blue. But I think that's pretty much all I would do here. So then I'll go ahead and click Edit in Dehancer. All right, so first thing I will do is I will start clicking on some of these film stocks and see if there's anything that I'm really liking. And what's nice is you have so many different options and so many different ranges, and then especially when you start pushing and pulling these, the options really are limitless when it comes to this, which is super cool. And then at the end of the day, if you really don't like any of them, you just unclick the profile and you can just edit how you might normally edit in Lightroom. And you can even do some of these more extreme ones. Like they have Lomo purple in here, which is super weird. I've never actually shot Lomo purple film, so that's kind of an interesting option that they have. Kind of like this one. Makes it a little bit more on the green side than I want, and it really kind of decreases these highlights. So what I might do is like increase that white point a little bit. And then I might come up to temperature comp and bring a little bit more of that pink back in. And you can kind of see exactly how that impacted the image. Very subtle, but I think it looks pretty nice. Adds a little bit more contrast and saturation. So then does this image really need film grain? I might add some to this one. So let's go ahead and come down to film grain. I don't really want to add any color noise to this, so let's just get rid of that. I really do not want a lot in this because it's already pretty busy background, but it's a very film-like image already, so I'm just going to go ahead and make this grain look a little bit more like film grain. So I like to increase the resolution all the way. And then I'll typically bring down the midtones and the highlights, just because when film grain acts the way that it typically does, it impacts the shadows a lot more than the highlights. So let's see how that impacted. And that looks good to me. I don't think that there's much else that I would do there. I'd probably leave it about here. Then I'll come down, I'll take a look at the halation and see how that's going to kind of impact the image. I typically like to go directly to mask mode just to see exactly how much of the background is being impacted. And depending on the lens and like the way that you've shot your image, the background gain is going to affect this a lot stronger. So what I kind of like is that the bumper is being impacted quite a bit, and I don't really want to impact those palm trees. I just think it's going to become a little bit too distracting for this. I think the impact's a little strong right now, so I'm going to bring that down. I'll bring down some of the diffusion as well, and probably just leave it about there. And so then what you can see when you zoom in is you just get this very subtle red that kind of comes across here. See that? Pretty cool. So honestly, I might be done with this image. If I really wanted to, there's a lot of different things that I could do here, right? You could make this image a lot more moody, bring the exposure like way down if I would have messed with it in Lightroom even more. There's all sorts of different ways to edit this image. I'm just doing this really quick to kind of show you guys different examples and how Dehancer can really, you know, help your workflow if this is kind of the look that you're going for. So yeah, I'll just go ahead and click OK. Then again, the image will come into here. This is the before and the after. So pretty subtle, but has a pretty big impact at the same time, and in my opinion makes the image look a lot better. So in general, I really like the Dehancer platform, and I think it's something that I'm going to consistently use within my workflow because it just works so seamlessly with Lightroom. Now, do I think that this is for everybody? I don't know. It really kind of depends on the photography that you're looking to shoot and just the images that you're wanting to create. If you're somebody that shoots primarily digital and you're wanting to get more film-like looks, then yes, I would 100% recommend this. Definitely does have a higher price point than a lot of other things, like if you're just looking to buy presets or something like that. But with this, you're able to really fine-tune a lot of these different things that you're not able to do in Lightroom. And then having the halation and the bloom effects are really nice in my opinion. And then having all of these different film effects that you can add to the image, and having all of these different profiles that are just one click away from really changing that, and then fine tuning with pushing and pulling. It's kind of next to none. There's really nothing else available that's going to kind of give you all of these different tools. So I would definitely recommend it if that's something that you're looking at doing, because for myself, if I look at it, right, so it's about $200 for this. How many rolls of film are you going to potentially buy until you hit that 200 mark between developing and scanning and just the added time that film kind of adds to your workflow? To me, the $200 price point is definitely worth it. I'm wanting my digital images to look as film-like as possible, so having Dehancer as an option is definitely something that I'm thankful for, and it's fitting into my workflow very easily. And again, Dehancer did provide me with this software for free, and I was able to get a discount code for all of you. So if you use the discount code Michael10, you will get 10% off of this. Go ahead and click the link in the description if you would like that. It really helps myself out as well as the channel. So if you were interested in it, again, Michael10 to get 10% off of Dehancer. If you guys do have any other questions or you'd like me to go over anything else about the platform, go ahead and leave a comment down below. But with all that being said, go ahead and like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.